The chronicles will say you fought for God, but the letter you write tonight, by the dying light of an oil lamp, tells a secret that could get you killed. The air in your tent is thick with the ghosts of smells: sweat, old leather, stale wine, and the faint, sweet odor of decay that clings to everything in this God's forsaken land. Outside, the camp is a restless beast, murmuring with the groans of the sick and the low laughter of men gambling away their souls. Your shadow, huge and distorted, dances against the canvas wall. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. You can almost hear the crackle of those purifying flames, feel their heat on your son's small back. This is the secret 99% of people never grasp about the medieval world. The church didn't just sell you salvation, it ran the most successful protection racket in human history. They created the fear, and then they sold you the only cure. The crinkle of the parchment is deafening in the silence as the priest's assistant fills out the indulgence. Your son's name, a smear of ink, a price paid. Because if the church was willing to steal the very architecture of its enemies and pass it off as a miracle, what other secrets did they take? What forbidden knowledge of medicine, of nature, of the human soul did they steal, rename, and then bury beneath their altars? And the priest was the sole examiner. Your supposed crime is theft, a silver buckle from the Reeves saddlebag. But you know that isn't why you are kneeling here. Your heart, a frantic bird against your ribs. It's because of the man you gave shelter to 3 nights ago. The man with the haunted eyes and the book wrapped in oilskin, filled with words that questioned everything Father Thomas preaches. The Reeves saw him leaving your cottage at dawn. This isn't about a buckle. This is about a message. It is about sealing a leak before it becomes a flood. They aren't just outlawing a cure. They are erasing a legacy. They are burning the library to sell you a single approved page. She scrapes the paste onto a clean linen cloth. A poultice. The heat from it is a living thing against her palm. She looks up at you for the first time, and her eyes aren't mad or evil. They are tired. They are the eyes of a woman who has seen too much death and knows the cost of life. "This on his chest," she whispers, her voice raspy like dry leaves. "Keep it warm." It's a shared secret, a flicker of defiance in the eyes of your neighbors. This is the medieval equivalent of a meme, of street art spray-painted on a palace wall. It's how you speak when your tongue can get you killed. Imagine the stonemason. His name is lost, but his anger is immortal. Feel the grit of stone dust under his fingernails, the raw, bleeding calluses on his palms. Hear the sharp, rhythmic chink, scrape, chink of his chisel against the limestone. An ASMR track of slow, meticulous revenge. Your heart seizes, the metallic taste of fear flooding your mouth as you stare at the forbidden diagrams scrawled on the parchment before you. Proof of a heresy they would gladly burn you for. You have a single, cold breath to decide. Do you destroy a lifetime of forbidden knowledge, or do you face the fire for a future you will never see? You are here to buy him time. The priest, a man whose soft hands have never known a callous, explains it again. Purgatory isn't hell, but a place of purifying fire, where every sin is burned away over centuries of torment. His voice is a low, practiced hum. But for a donation, a gift to God's work, the Pope can draw from a treasury of merit, the good deeds of the saints, and apply it to your child's account. He's running a divine bank, and you are here to take out a loan against salvation. They look like the ribs of a beautiful cage, built from stolen bones. The intricate rose window is no longer an eye to heaven. It's a beautiful distraction, designed to keep you from looking at the evidence under your feet. This cathedral isn't a house of God. It's a crime scene, polished and consecrated for Sunday service. You look up at the stone saints, staring down with their hollow eyes, and you wonder what they're really guarding. You feel a sudden, disorienting memory of your mother rubbing a salve of egg whites and comfrey on a burn you suffered as a child. This is the secret they don't want you to know, the one that 99% of the people watching this terrifying theater will never learn. Newly analyzed clerical texts, hidden for centuries, contain the recipes. They reveal instructions on preparing salves that could temporarily shield the skin, or how to heat the water just enough to scald but not char. It was never a test of God. It was a test of loyalty. Elspeth now adds a dollop of honey to the green powder, her hands moving with the unthinking grace of 1,000 repetitions. This is the wisdom they are trying to burn from the world. A church edict from the last century declared it illegal for any woman to practice medicine without formal training. Training that was, of course, utterly forbidden to them. It's a trick as old as time, a pattern we still see today every time an ancient remedy is dismissed by the very system that can't profit from it. That one, with the bulging eyes and the long, lolling tongue, doesn't its face look just a little like the bishop who raised the grain tax last winter? The one who let children starve while his own belly grew fat? And the one next to it, a demon with bat wings, devouring a nobleman's coin purse. You know exactly who that is meant to be. It's plausible deniability, a monstrous fantasy they can pass off as a warning against sin. But down here on the street, everyone knows it is a state of mind, the moment of enlightenment when you understand a process through observation and repetition, not just blind faith. It is the birth of the scientific method happening in terror, in 1,000 lightless cellars just like this across the dark continent of Europe. Every successful distillation, every new reaction is a tiny chip taken from the prison wall of dogma. A heavy knock echoes from the cellar door above. It is not the gentle rap of your apprentice. It is the hard, impatient sound of wood on wood, the sound of authority. The Vatican's most profitable asset wasn't gold, land, or relics. It was an invisible place they invented, and the terror of being trapped there forever. Your hand trembles. The coin is cold against your skin, the last bit of silver you have, earned over a month of hauling stone. It isn't for bread. It isn't for the leaking thatch in your roof. It is for your son, 7 years old, taken by the flux 2 winters ago. The air in the cathedral is thick with the sweet, cloying smell of incense and the sour scent of human desperation. They co-opted the forbidden mathematical and astronomical wisdom of the pagans, rebranded it as a divine gift, and then set about burning the libraries and slaughtering the people who held the original copyrights. This is the greatest act of intellectual property theft in human history. It's the medieval equivalent of a modern tech corporation stealing revolutionary open source code, patenting it as its own invention, and then using its army of lawyers to sue the original open source creators into oblivion for patent infringement. The soaring arches no longer look like praying hands. A reminder of who holds the power here, not the distant God in heaven, but the man beside you breathing the same smoky air. He lowers a cruet of oil. To sanctify your flesh for his judgment, he murmurs. his breath smelling of sour wine. He begins to anoint your right arm, from elbow to fingertips. The oil is cool, thick, and strangely slick. It doesn't feel like the holy chrism used for baptisms. It has a faint, herby scent you can't quite place, and it leaves a waxy bag, invisible film on your skin. The truth is far more sinister. It was a targeted campaign to eliminate the competition. Elspeth and thousands like her were the community's only doctors. Their gardens were pharmacies. Their minds were libraries of unwritten cures passed down through generations of women. This knowledge was a direct threat to the Church's burgeoning, male-dominated medical authority, an authority based on prayer, bleeding, and Latin they couldn't read. The priest preaches that only God, through his ordained men, can heal. But you saw the last child the priest prayed over. You saw the small, still body carried out to the churchyard. But up there, clinging to the eaves, something is watching you. Not angels, not saints, something else. Historians will call them grotesque waterspouts, a charmingly morbid form of medieval drainage. But 99% of people who walk this muddy street will never know the secret purpose of the gargoyles. They are a rebellion carved in stone, a permanent, silent scream, a middle finger to the establishment, etched 100 feet in the air where it could never be erased. You look closer. Just as a modern whistleblower uses encryption to leak a truth the powerful want to suppress, you use the language of dragons and planetary symbols to share your findings on distillation, on the properties of acids, on compounds that can ease a fever or create a pigment of impossible blue. The quest for gold is your cover story. The real work is finding the very building blocks of reality. The philosopher's stone they all whisper about, it isn't a stone at all. A voice, cold and righteous, slices through the wood. Open in the name of the parish. Your absence from the repentance mass has been noted. It is an act of defiance against God's will. The wooden bar across your door feels as thin as a reed. Outside is the plague, carried on the breath of the faithful. In here is the sin of survival. The pounding comes again, harder this time, splintering the wood near the latch. They will not ask a third time. The sound rings out, echoing across the floor, seeming to measure the distance from one massive pillar to the next. That echo travels not across a holy unit, but a pagan one. The realization washes over you, cold and sickening. You are not standing in a Christian sanctuary. You are standing in a pagan temple that has been skinned and is wearing a Christian facade. The church didn't receive this knowledge from God. They took it. This is different. This is a quiet, patient heat, a predator's stillness. Father Thomas stands beside you. His voice, usually a comforting drone, is now a blade carving the silence. He speaks of God's infallible justice, how the pure will be protected by his divine grace, how the water will reject the liar and embrace the innocent. The words are for the crowd, a soothing balm for their anxious faith. But his hand on your shoulder is for you. His grip is firm, his thumb pressing into the knot of muscle by your neck. He holds up a book, the Malleus Maleficarum, its pages crisp and new, and his voice rings with a terrible certainty in the cold stone church. He speaks of maleficium, of women who curdle milk with a glance, who sour the ale, who steal the life from babes with a touch. But what they don't want you to know, the secret that bleeds between the lines of that terrible book, is that the war on witches was never about Satan. It was about control. 99% of people today still don't understand this. They imagine cackling hags and black cauldrons. The church told you where to look for God, but they never told you where to look for the truth. You stand in the shadow of the cathedral, a cold, damp wind crawling under your woolen tunic. The air smells of wet stone, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet decay of the graveyard just beyond the wall. You crane your neck, your eyes tracing the impossible lines that soar toward a gray, unforgiving sky. It is a monument to divine power, a promise of heaven, built by men who live in filth and fear. The branding of dissent as misinformation. The creation of official narratives that protect the powerful. The use of fear to manufacture consent. The medieval peasant had their secret alphabet scratched in the dirt. You have encryption. The scribe hid truth in the margins of a holy book. We have the dark web. The war for your mind never ended. It just evolved. They lied about the past to control their present. What else are they lying about now? There is a sharp, satisfying hiss. The intimate sound of the world being unmade. You watch, mesmerized, as the acid eats a hole clean through the metal, releasing a foul, reddish-brown smoke that stings your eyes. This is not sorcery. It is a power they cannot control. What they don't want you to know is that this is the secret birth of chemistry. Don't let them find this, he whispered. The cures inside are older than the church. You haven't dared to open it yet. It sits beneath a loose floorboard, a second, more dangerous sin hidden in your home. Suddenly, a sound cuts through your rhythmic scrubbing, freezing the blood in your veins. It isn't the creak of the death cart or the distant wail of a mourner. It's a sharp, heavy pounding on your front door. Bang, bang, bang. Not a neighbor, not a friend. This is the sound of authority. 72 feet. That has absolutely nothing to do with the church. It's the same unit of measurement found in the precise, celestial alignments of ancient stone circles, of Stonehenge. The sacred geometry that allows these walls to defy gravity, to soar without collapsing, shows stunning parallels to the pre-Christian traditions of the very people the church systematically destroyed. A coin slips from your cold fingers. You watch it fall, and the clatter against the stone is sharp, metallic, and horrifyingly loud in the sacred silence. They are your neighbors, the woman who buys your bread, the man who shoes your horse, the children who chase geese in the lane. Today, they are not your neighbors. They are the audience, and you are the spectacle. Before you, the cauldron rests on a bed of glowing coals. It is not large, but it dominates the world. The water within it shimmers, a dark mirror reflecting the stained glass martyrs above. It steams, but it does not boil. You watch the surface. You have seen water boil for washing, for cooking. You know its furious, frantic dance. You watch her fingernails, stained green and brown, scrape against the rough stone of a mortar. The sound is a rhythmic, gritty whisper. Scrape, thump, scrape, thump, as she pulverizes dried leaves into a fragrant dust that smells of pepper and deep woods. This is the sound of a secret being unlocked. This is the sound of heresy. The new priest says this sound is the devil's work. He says Elspeth's knowledge isn't passed down from her mother, but whispered to her by a goat-headed demon in the witching hour. They burned the books on drilling into the head, he says, his eyes dark with a terrible knowledge. But that's not all they burned. The cures they buried for the body are nothing compared to the ones they buried for the soul. Not in the open field, but in the margins. This was their stunning, desperate revelation. They preserve knowledge not in libraries their enemies would burn, but in the very fabric of their oppression. A symbol carved into a church pew, a melody sung by a minstrel that carried a forbidden history, a story told to a child by the fire, a story that sounded like a fairy tale but was, in fact, a blueprint for survival. They knew that if the real history was lost, the same tools of control could be forged again. And they were right. Look around you. The green lion devouring the sun isn't a mythical beast. It's the decknamen, the code name for using an acid to dissolve gold. This is not magic. It is a shield of language to hide your experiments from the Inquisitor's men, who see the devil's hand in any attempt to truly understand creation. You carefully unstopper a small glass vial. The clear liquid inside, your aqua fortis, is a monster you birthed from saltpeter and oil of vitriol. You let a single, perfect drop fall onto a scrap of steel. It's the same reason powerful men today will hide a truth that inconveniences their narrative. They prefer a story of divine will, of unavoidable fate, because it keeps you on your knees. They don't want you to know that you can stand up, lock your own door, and in the quiet terror of your own home, save yourself. A memory flashes, the physician's final warning, his eyes wide with a fear that wasn't of God, but of men. He pressed a small leather-bound book into your hands. You follow the impossible curve of an arch with your eyes, tracing its journey from the floor to a vaulted ceiling that seems to touch the heavens. The geometry is perfect, too perfect. It sings a silent, mathematical song that feels older than the cross, older than the saints frozen in the glass. This is the secret that changed everything. 99% of people who walk these halls never learn that the fundamental unit of measurement used to build many of these cathedrals is something called the megalithic yard. It's a precise length, about 2. They tell you God will judge the flesh. The truth is far more convenient. The priest has already decided. You are on your knees. The stone floor of the church is not just cold. It is a deep, ancient cold that leaches the warmth from your bones. A cold that remembers every sinner who has knelt here before you. The air is thick with the competing smells of beeswax, stale incense, and the damp human sweat of fear. Your fear. 100 pairs of eyes are fixed on the back of your neck, a physical weight pressing you down. The most dangerous book ever written wasn't bound in human skin. It was bound in lies, and its target was the woman who now kneels on the damp earth in front of you. Your child's breath is a hot, shallow rasp in the suffocating quiet of the hut. The air is thick with the sweet, sick smell of crushed herbs and wood smoke, a scent that clings to your wool tunic like a prayer and a sin all at once. The woman, Elspeth, doesn't look at you. Her focus is absolute. Her hands a blur of ancient knowledge. A wave of cool air touches a part of you that has never felt air before. The crushing pressure behind your eyes vanishes, like a storm cloud breaking. You take a breath, a real deep breath, and for the first time in months, it doesn't send a spike of agony through your skull. You survived. You are living proof of a forbidden cure. The surgeon leans close, his breath smelling of fennel and wood smoke, and whispers a truth that will haunt you more than the surgery itself. A grand cathedral of control, built stone by the church and the nobility. They didn't lead Europe out of the shadows. They orchestrated the shadows so they could sell the only light. The 99% of history we are taught is the victory speech of the wardens, the heretics and witches, burned not for consorting with demons, but for practicing medicine, for studying the stars, for thinking freely. They didn't lose a debate. They lost a war against a centralized authority that claimed a monopoly on truth. But they fought back. Your knuckles are raw from grinding mercury ore. The fine red dust settled deep into the lines of your skin, a permanent stain of your secret work. Upstairs, the world sleeps, believing you are a fool chasing gold. Let them. 99% of people will die believing that lie, because the truth is a heresy that earns you the stake. Gold is for kings. You are chasing the mind of God Himself. The texts before you are not spells, but a complex code. This is the secret science of survival. The heresy practiced in the Italian city of Milan, where the Duke's soldiers would wall up the sick inside their own homes, leaving them to die. Yes, but saving the city. A brutal, godless calculus that worked. This is the truth that chroniclers and priests would later bury, because it's a truth that terrifies them. It suggests that man is not a helpless pawn in a divine game. It suggests that a simple bar on a door can be more powerful than a bishop's blessing. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. But the other feels like heresy. It feels like a conspiracy that runs so deep, it connects the holiest of hermits to the grimiest of tradesmen. You stare at the mark on the chisels, now hidden beneath a pile of rags in your workshop. You are a link in a chain, and you have no idea what it's holding together, or what will happen if it breaks. Who is coming to read these walls? And what will they do with the power you've died to protect? It's the same way a simple, effective herbal remedy today might threaten a billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry. If man can heal himself, what is the purpose of a priest promising a divine cure? And so in the quiet scriptoriums of monasteries, the monks didn't just copy ancient medical texts. They edited them. They rewrote them. They systematically destroyed any procedure that didn't place God at the center of healing. They branded these surgeons as heretics, while secretly knowing their methods worked. Suddenly, a change. The grinding stops, the candle flickers one last time, and in the sudden dark, you finally understand. The anchorite cipher was never about a single secret. It was the key to unlocking the greatest lie ever told. The story you were fed, the one of ignorant peasants and benevolent kings, of holy wars and divine light pulling Europe from the darkness, was a carefully crafted cage. The Dark Ages were not a time of ignorance. They were a time of enforced ignorance. You see it now. The darkness wasn't an accident. It was architecture. The philosopher's stone was never meant to grant eternal life. That was the lie told to protect a truth far more dangerous. The blueprint for the modern world. You are in the cellar. The air is thick enough to chew. A foul stew of sulfur, vinegar, and something metallic that coats the back of your throat. A single tallow candle sputters. Its weak light making the glass alembics and retorts on your bench sweat like living things. You dip a stiff-bristled brush into a bucket of steaming water and begin to scrub the floorboards again. The scrape, scrape, scrape of the bristles on the wood is the only prayer you have left. It's an ASMR quality sermon of survival, a rhythmic defiance against the divine judgment everyone else has accepted. They confess their sins. You scrub away the invisible ones. They pray for miracles. You burn the rags you use to clean. What they don't want you to know is that this house of God is built on a lie. The blueprint for this holy place wasn't delivered by an angel. It was stolen from the people they called devils. You stand in the nave, a dwarf in a forest of stone. A river of colored light flows from the stained glass windows, pooling on the floor in shimmering patches of ruby and sapphire. The air is thick and cold, smelling of ancient dust, melted wax, and the ghost of 1,000 whispered prayers. You're supposed to feel small here. You hammer the last nail home, the finality of the act echoing in the quiet street. You are sending your warning out into the world. But now, you carry a heavier burden. A recently unearthed set of blacksmith tongs from a 14th century dig site not far from here bears that same chilling mark, the anchorite's cross. Archaeologists today are baffled, but you are living their confusion. You are now a keeper of two secrets, the one you send and the one you received. One is a simple act of defiance against greed. You are a single, fragile point of failure. If you die before the work is done, if your mind breaks, if the nail snaps, it all turns to dust. They feed you, they bless you, they ask for your prayers through the slot in the wall, never knowing they are sustaining the survival of the very heresy they spilled oceans of blood to eradicate. You press your forehead against the cold stone, the dust of forgotten alphabets on your skin. You are the last line of defense. But what happens when the final truth is etched? In cemeteries far from the cathedrals, skeletal evidence shows a shocking truth. In the hands of a specialist like this, your odds of survival were better than 50%. These weren't butchers. They were masters of a science the church wanted to bury. A science that proved a man with a sharp rock could do what endless prayers could not. They understood cranial pressure. They understood that the demon in your head was just blood and fluid, and it needed a way out. This knowledge threatens the entire system. 3 short scrapes, a pause, then 2 more. Your blood runs cold. This is not the signal for a routine update. This is not a new piece of knowledge to be archived. It is the signal for a purge. A new inquisitor has arrived in the valley, and the message says he isn't hunting for witches. He's hunting for librarians, and he is starting at the church. You finish your prayer, but the words taste like dust in your mouth. You look up at the crucifix hanging above the altar, at the tormented face of this new God, the God of sacrifice and suffering, and you realize, with a terror that is colder than the stone beneath you, that if the church would lie so completely about something as holy as a saint burying a goddess to build a chapel, what other darker truths have they buried right under your feet? The priest's words echo in your memory, his voice booming from the pulpit just last week. To bar your door is to bar your heart to God's mercy. To hide from your brethren is to hide from Christ himself. Every creak of your floorboards feels like a sin. Every breath you take in this sealed room feels like a theft from God. You are choosing your life over your soul. You turn back to your work. Your hands are raw, red, the skin cracked from the harsh soap. If this one book survived, buried by a forgotten monk who chose to defy the fire, how many others didn't? How many other Jesuses, other paths to God, other secret sayings were turned to smoke and ash? It makes you wonder what other truths were burned to keep you controlled and compliant in the pews. And how many are still out there, buried in the sand, waiting for the sound of another shovel? Why would their symbol be on a tool of a working man? An anchorite has no need for a chisel. They have no need for communication with the outside world at all. It was a pattern interrupt, a piece of code that didn't belong in the system, and it made the hair on your arms stand up. The network was supposed to be secular, a shield against the church and the nobility, not part of it. As you nail the finished, marked shoe onto the Reeves horse, your mind races. You are carving the lines of poems that speak of a God found not in gilded cathedrals, but in the human heart. A love so profound, it requires no intermediary, no priest, no pope. Ideas that dismantle empires. Each night, you work until your arm cramps and your eyes burn. You are a living library, and your shelves are failing. Your memory, once a fortress, now has cracks in its walls. The faces of your family are starting to fade. But the diagrams, the words, the secret histories, these you hold onto with the ferocity of a dragon guarding its hoard. There is only the blinding pressure behind your eyes, a demon trying to hammer its way out of your head, and this forbidden, silent ritual. The scraping begins. It's a dry, intimate sound, like fingernails dragging across slate. A sound that vibrates through your jaw and into the roots of your teeth. Scrape, scrape, scrape. This is trepanation, and 99% of people, both then and now, believe it was crude butchery, a guaranteed death sentence. But what the church didn't want you to know, what they spent centuries erasing from the record, is that the bones tell a different story. And you are not just a praying hermit. You are a cryptographer, a protector of the master keys. You are the server admin for a secret internet made of stone, iron, and ink. Your cell is the firewall. The faintest sound pulls you from your thoughts. The almost silent, dry scratch of a fingernail tracing a symbol on the stone outside your cell. It's a sound that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. A whisper of grit against grit that carries more weight than any sermon. You hold your breath, listening. They hijacked the spiritual loyalty of the local people, redirecting a river of belief that had flowed for centuries. Suddenly, the cold floor doesn't feel like holy ground. It feels like a crime scene. The familiar statue of the saint in the corner, her face serene and pale, now looks like an imposter. The stories you were told of a pious abbess who performed quaint miracles feel thin and hollow compared to the old tales of a goddess who breathed fire and shaped the land. Saints weren't born of miracles. They were manufactured in Rome. You said the plague wasn't a punishment from God, but a poison carried in the breath, on the clothes, on the very air of the afflicted. He called it a seed of sickness. The priest called him a heretic. You press your ear to the rough wood of your door. You can hear them, the faithful, their voices a droning chant as they march in procession to the cathedral. They whip their own backs, their cries of penance mingling with the wet, hacking coughs of the dying. It's the WikiLeaks of the ancient world, revealing what the authorities truly feared. It proves that the official story is often just the version told by those who won. It forces you to ask a terrifying question. You believe demons live in fog. You've never seen a toothbrush. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But now, you hold proof that the very foundation of your world, the one story you've been given, is built on the ashes of other, forbidden stories. It's the internet of the oppressed, where data packets are horseshoes, barrel hoops, and axe heads, and the encryption is the simple shared knowledge of working men. But just last week, something new arrived. A trader, passing through from the coast, left a set of mason's chisels for sharpening. Hidden in the maker's mark, almost obscured by rust, was a symbol you'd never seen before. Not a warning, not a merchant's sign. It was the anchorite's cross, the mark of those holy few, walled into stone cells for a life of prayer, supposedly dead to the world. You are not a prisoner of the church. You are a secret agent hiding within its holiest embrace. Your fingers ache, the nail biting into the soft flesh beneath your own. You are transcribing the movements of the stars, not as divine omens, but as predictable mathematical certainties, a clockwork universe that doesn't need a constant guiding hand. You are scratching down the formulas for medicines derived from forbidden plants, cures the church dismisses as witchcraft, but which you know can cool a fever, stop a seizure, save a child. They told you prayer was the only medicine that worked. They lied. You're strapped to a wooden table, the rough-hewn timber digging into your back, and the only thing you taste is the metallic tang of your own terror. A man you've never seen before, whose hands are as calloused as a stonemason's, holds a piece of sharpened flint to your skull. There is no wine to dull the senses, no holy water to sanctify the act. But they all know the key. This key, the anchorite cipher, allows them to modify the common alphabet, to turn a mundane list of goods into a chemical formula, to transform a prayer into a diagram for a water pump. Each symbol you protect is a piece of a distributed encryption system, a way to hide forbidden knowledge in the noise of everyday life. The knowledge the authorities, the church, the nobles are so desperate to burn. This is the secret that changes everything. This wasn't a scattered resistance. It was a highly organized, pan-European intellectual underground. It's the same way a corporation today might co-opt a rebellion, stealing its symbols and slogans to sell you something, diluting the original fire until all that remains is a harmless, marketable ash. They didn't destroy the holy sites. That would have caused riots. Instead, they built on top of them. New archaeological evidence confirms it. Beneath the foundations of this very church, dig down far enough, and you won't find the relics of a saint. You'll find the fire pit of a pagan temple. You stopped looking days ago, after you saw what they did to the Cooper's family, dragging them from their home because the father had a cough, leaving the children wailing in the street. From your window, a sliver of gray light cuts through the wooden shutter, illuminating dust motes dancing in a column of air. Each one, you imagine, could be a carrier of the pestilence. This is the new theology, the forbidden knowledge whispered to you by a disgraced physician before he vanished. So in the year 367 AD, the order went out from Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria. All such heretical texts were to be destroyed. It was a war not of swords, but of stories, and the winners got to write history. They burned the competition, burying the secret in the sand. You run your thumb over the crumbling edge of a page. You hear the faint, dry crackle of fibers giving way after 16 centuries of silence. It's the sound of a truth refusing to stay dead. This isn't just an ancient document. It's a leaked file from a 1,600-year-old cover-up. With a small, sharp file, you etch a tiny, almost invisible notch near the third nail hole. One extra notch, a symbol of a corrupt official, a man to be watched, to be wary of. The sound is a quiet, deliberate shk, a secret whisper of metal on metal. It's a tiny act of treason that could get you hanged. But it's also an act of community, of protection. This network, this silent web of makers and menders, is the only real government you trust. The frantic etchings of a mind fractured by solitude and starvation. They will be wrong, because this is not prayer. It is a cipher, a systematic, organized preservation of knowledge so heretical, so dangerous, that the only way to save it was to have the church itself pay to entomb it. They thought they were walling in a holy woman. Instead, they built a fortress around the ideas they burn people for even thinking. This is institutional capture at its most brilliant, a tactic modern activists would recognize, using the system's own structures, its own reverence, against itself. It's too late for a neighbor. The gruff voice that calls your name is not a friendly one. The book is still open on the dirt floor, a testament to your crime. The metallic taste of fear floods your mouth. To be caught with this knowledge isn't just a sin, it's a death sentence. And death is at your door. You see Alara, the farmer's wife, dragging a stick through the mud by her fence post, leaving a mark that looks like a child's drawing of a bird with a broken wing. It's an alert. You see Thomas, the blacksmith, hammering a new brand onto a horseshoe, a subtle curve added to his usual maker's mark. It's a confirmation. You see Brother Michael, the scribe, illuminating a manuscript in the scriptorium, adding a tiny hidden rabbit in the margins, its ears pointing not up, but down. It's an instruction. The farmer doesn't know the blacksmith. The blacksmith doesn't know the scribe. They are sanitized marketing materials designed to hide this pagan continuity, to paper over the cracks of a faith built on the bones of another. Saint Brigid, the patron of fertility, healing, and the forge, is a ghost. A Christian mask placed over the face of the powerful Celtic goddess Brigid, whose worship was too deep in the soil to ever be uprooted. This is a form of spiritual conquest, a cultural erasure so complete you don't even see the chains. The church promised prayer would save you. They lied. What 99% of people will never learn is that in the heart of the Black Death, some towns had survival rates over 40% higher than the pious, God-fearing average. And it had nothing to do with faith. The air in your small home is thick with the sharp, clean scent of vinegar and lye, a smell more sacred to you now than any incense. Outside, the death cart's wheels groan in the mud, a sound that has replaced the morning bird song. You don't look. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. There is no need for a priest here, no need for a bishop, a church, or a pope. It's a direct line, a personal journey to enlightenment. It turns faith from a system of control into a path of self-discovery. This was the ultimate threat, a message so powerful it could dismantle an empire before it was even built. A slight upturn on the left branch warns of patrols on the North Road. An extra deep crease signifies a demand for coin, not grain. Today's message must be subtle, yet clear. You quench the near-finished shoe in the slack tub. The water explodes in a furious hiss, a plume of steam rising to meet the rafters, smelling of iron and quenched fire. It's a sound that scrapes directly against the inside of your skull. The ASMR of medieval industry. You bring the cooled shoe to the finishing block. This is when your real work begins. You take the nail, the one you prized loose from a floorboard years ago, your only tool, your only pen, and you press it to the stone. The sound begins. A faint, dry scree, like an insect trapped in a jar. Fingernails scraping against rough stone. It's a sound that would drive another person mad, but for you, it is the sound of survival. It is the sound of a promise being kept. 99% of historians, centuries from now, will find these walls and dismiss your work as devotional madness. Pious graffiti, it's carved into the heavy oak lintel above your door, dismissed by everyone as a simple charm to ward off evil spirits. But here, in the book, it sits next to a chart of the star plow, a key to navigating by the night sky. It isn't a charm, it's a letter, a piece of a hidden grammar. You've been living inside a secret sentence your entire life and never knew how to read it. The walls of your prison are covered in a language of liberation. A sharp, heavy knock echoes from your door, shaking the wattle and daub wall. They see piety. They see sacrifice. They do not see the truth. Your gaze drifts to the wall opposite the grate, the one no one else can see. It is a tapestry of scratches, lines, and symbols that look like the ramblings of a broken mind. This is what the historians missed. They were looking for a single, secret alphabet, a code. But 99% of all communication relies on something far more powerful: context. The scratches on your wall are not a language. They are a key, a method. You close your eyes and you can see the network breathing. You feel a cold knot of dread and wonder form in your gut. It feels like a secret you were born knowing but were told to forget. What they don't want you to know is that your prayer is being hijacked. This is the church's most brilliant and most forbidden secret. When they couldn't stamp out a god, they gave it a new name and a Christian robe. 99% of the hagiographies, the holy biographies of the saints you hear read aloud in a dull drone, are not history. A symbol of a hidden network, of others like you. It's not just a joke anymore. It's a message, a question, a breadcrumb left in the wilderness of a sacred text, waiting for another rebel to find it. And it asks a terrifying question. Who else is reading the secrets between the lines? 114 secret sayings that Jesus spoke. And as scholars would later translate, these sayings contain a spiritual path so dangerous to the powerful, they ordered every copy burned. Why? Because it tells you the kingdom of God is not in a building. It is not dispensed by a man in robes. It is not something you wait for after you die. Saying 3 reads, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you." You draw the iron out. Clang. You begin to shape the curve of the shoe. Clang. Each strike is a punctuation mark in a sentence of silent fury. You work with a speed born of a lifetime's practice, the muscles in your back and arms moving in a familiar dance. 99% of people see a man making a horseshoe. They don't see a man encoding a warning. They don't know that the placement of the nail holes, the depth of the fuller groove, the very shape of the heel, it all has meaning. It's a language of survival. Through it, you watch the daily miracle of the Mass, the flicker of candles on gold, the smell of incense and melting wax, a ghost in your cell. The second is a small, shuttered slot, where a pail of water and a crust of dark bread are passed to you each day. The third is your secret, a small grate, low on the wall, facing the anonymity of the churchyard, where whispers can be passed in the dead of night. The candle gutters, its tallow sputtering. Your shadow, gaunt and huge, dances on the wall opposite the squint. It offered you the power to heal yourself, to understand your world, to be more than just livestock that can speak. They tell you what to fear. The book teaches you what to understand. It's a truth that hasn't changed in 700 years. As you turn a page, your eye catches a symbol in the margin, a complex sigil of intersecting lines and a circle. You freeze. The ASMR-like sound of your own breathing fills the silence. You've seen it before. The greatest secret of the Middle Ages wasn't a conspiracy of kings, but a whispered language of the powerless. It was a secret hidden in plain sight, dismissed for centuries as madness. You press your forehead against the cold, weeping stone of your cell. You have not felt the sun or the rain in 20 years. The world knows you as an anchorite, walled into the side of the church, a living martyr whose prayers are a pillar holding up the sky. They leave you bread and water through a small slot. They confess their sins through a grate. She taught you how to weave the rushes into the four-armed cross, a charm you hang over the door. You can almost feel it now, the dry, whispery rasp of river reeds, as her gnarled fingers twisted them into the sacred shape. The priest says it represents the cross of Christ. Your grandmother said it was the sun, a prayer for the returning light. Her feast day, he preaches, is the 1st of February. Your grandmother called it Imbolc, the day the ewe's milk begins to flow. The first stirring of life in the frozen earth. The parallels are too exact. In the bottom corner of the page, so small it is almost a flaw in the parchment, you draw a rabbit. Not a brave rabbit or a funny one, just a simple rabbit, a symbol of the meek and the powerless. In its paws, you draw a tiny slate. And on that slate, with a stroke of the quill so fine it's barely visible, you etch a single sharp symbol. It's a mark few would recognize, a secret sign whispered about in the darkest corners of the monastery. It is the anchorite's sigil. You can't read the script, a strange and angular Coptic, but you feel the weight of it. You are holding something that was never meant to be found. You are holding a version of history that survived its own execution. 99% of the world still has no idea what you've just unearthed. This is the Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of Gospels the Church tried to exterminate in the 4th century. One of them is called the Gospel of Thomas. It's not a story. It has no nativity, no crucifixion, no resurrection. It is only a list. Men have lost tools. Women have lost winter stores. Your jaw tightens. You pick up a bar of iron, its weight familiar and comforting in your hand. You thrust it into the glowing heart of the forge, and the coals roar as you work the bellows. The iron begins to glow. First a dull cherry, then a pulsing orange, then a brilliant, sun-bright yellow. The clang of hammer on anvil is your shield. It's the sound of honest labor, a rhythm that lulls the suspicious. No one looks twice at a blacksmith at his forge. Clang. It's a vault, and you are not the treasure. You are the key. Your world has shrunk to the size of your body. 3 paces long, 2 paces wide. Cold seeps from the stone floor, a constant, damp chill that lives in your bones now. There is no door, only 3 openings, 3 betrayals of the stone's finality. One is the squint, a narrow slit, angled so you can see the altar, but the priest can never truly see you. It tells you that the willow bark you chew for a headache is not a peasant's foolishness. It contains the same relief as a physician's expensive potion. It shows you how the moon governs the tides in the river, just as it governs the planting of your meager crops. 99% of people today are taught that your medieval mind was trapped by superstition. But in your hands is the evidence of a hidden, practical science, passed down in whispers because it offered power outside the church. You pray it will survive the journey. You pray it will survive the centuries. Because if it doesn't, the monster in the flickering lamplight is all you will ever be. And you begin to suspect that some truths, once buried, are never meant to be found. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax, damp earth, and something else, something ancient that rises from the very foundation of this place. You pray to Saint Bridget. You pray for your sister, whose belly is swollen with her first child, and for the new lambs, that they might survive the last cruel bite of winter. Your lips form the Latin words the priest taught you, but in the quiet of your mind, you hear your grandmother's voice, speaking the old tongue. She never called her a saint, she just called her Bridget. Most scribes would never dare, but you are not most scribes. The scratching of your quill is the only sound. It's an ASMR-like whisper against the stretched calfskin, a sound that says, I am here, I am thinking, I am fighting back. This silent war, fought with ink and wit, is the only war you can win. It's a truth that shatters the modern assumption of the pious, obedient monk. Historians have hidden this for centuries, preferring the narrative of quiet devotion over the reality of intellectual insurrection. Now for the final secret. You dig faster, sweat stinging your eyes. It's a jar, sealed with bitumen, tall as your forearm. For a moment, you hesitate. The old stories whisper of jinn, of spirits trapped in such vessels. But the thought of gold, of a forgotten treasure, is stronger than fear. You lift your tool and bring it down. The jar cracks with a sound like ancient bone breaking. There is no gold. Inside, nestled in the dark, are 13 leather-bound books, papyri. You pull one out. The pages are brittle, the color of old honey. In a world where the church reads all mail and a whispered word can lead to the pyre, the only safe way to speak is in a language the powerful cannot see. A shadow falls across your doorway. It's Thomas, the carter. He doesn't speak, just nods towards the heavy-shouldered destrier tied to the post, its coat gleaming like polished jet. The Reeves horse. You nod back, a silent understanding passing between you. The Reeve is coming to collect his dues in 2 days, a full week early, and his collectors have been aggressive. They call you a living saint, an anchorite, but the secret they buried with you in this stone tomb is that you are a living weapon aimed at the very heart of the church that celebrates your piety. The last rites were read for you a decade ago, a funeral service for a woman still breathing, as the masons sealed the final stone. To the world outside, you died. You became a holy relic, a conduit for prayer, sealed in a cell built against the cold north wall of the sanctuary. But you know the truth. This isn't a tomb. Outside, a dog barks, a sharp, sudden sound that makes your heart leap into your throat. Every shadow could be the Reeve. Every footstep could be the end of everything. This is the emotional cost of knowledge. Absolute terror, mixed with a dizzying, defiant hope. You've only ever seen a book in the priest's hands at Mass. It's Latin, a locked gate you were never meant to pass. He holds it up like a weapon or a shield, its meaning a mystery controlled by him alone. But this book speaks to you. It protects the nobles who grow rich, the bishops who gain power, and the entire structure of a society that needs you to believe you are a hero, not a murderer. They have hidden your doubt, your greed, your horror, because the truth doesn't build empires. The lie does. You fold the parchment, the ink still damp. The secret feels heavy in your hand, a tangible piece of a history they are trying to erase as it happens. Now, you must entrust it to a merchant heading home, a message in a bottle thrown into an ocean of propaganda. The name you whisper in prayer is not the one you think it is. It's a name the church tried to bury under 1,000 years of stone and incense, but which stubbornly refuses to die. You are on your knees. The cold of the floor seeps through your thin wool leggings, a familiar, biting penance. In front of you, a single tallow candle sputters, its weak light barely pushing back the hungry shadows that cling to the chapel walls. But you can go deeper. The margins are one thing. The Word of God is another. Yesterday, you made a mistake. While copying the scripture, you changed a single, tiny letter in a passage about usury. A subtle shift, an innocent error your overseer, with his failing eyesight, would never catch. But it's there, a permanent alteration to doctrine, a virus inserted into the holy text that subtly undermines the church's grip on wealth. You are not just mocking them in the margins. You are rewriting their reality from the inside out. This is a far more dangerous game. For 1,600 years, they told you there was only one story, one truth, one book. They lied. The real secret isn't what's in the Bible. It's what was violently torn out of it. You are not in a church. You are in Egypt, 1945. The sun is a hammer against your skull, and the air tastes of dust and forgotten millennia. Your name is Muhammad Ali al-Saman, and you are digging for fertilizer in the soft soil near the Jabal al-Tarif cliffs. Your mattock scrapes against something hard, not a stone. It's the hollow, resonant sound of baked clay. The air in your forge is a living thing, thick with the metallic tang of creation and the sharp, sulfuric breath of the coal fire. Heat shimmers above the anvil, distorting the world outside your open door. This is where secrets are born, hammered into steel under the deafening rhythm of your work. This is the dark web of your age, a peer-to-peer network of trust built not on code, but on calluses and shared grievances. It's not a joke. It's not a warning. It's something else. A signature, a mark of a hidden fellowship. And a cold dread washes over you as you realize it's the exact same symbol you saw scratched into the wall of the anchorite's cell. The symbol that was there, next to the blood. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The first secret the book teaches you is that the fever that took your sister wasn't God's will. It was poison in the well water, a rot from the tanner's runoff upstream that the village priest called a divine punishment. The book calls it by another name, preventable. Your fingers, calloused from the field and the axe, tremble as they trace the strange, spidery ink. The pages are stiff, smelling of smoke and dried herbs. It's the largest, most brutal land and power grab in living memory, all sanctified by a church that gets a share of the plunder. This is the medieval version of a government hiding the body count to sell a war to the public. The trauma of the men who fight it, the moral poison that seeps into your bones, that is an inconvenient detail best left out of the heroic chronicles. The lie is a fortress, stronger than any castle wall, because whispers are starting in the towns, carried by wandering preachers with fire in their eyes. Whispers that God's grace cannot be bought, and that the greatest sin of all is being committed by the very men claiming to hold the keys to his kingdom. It is treason. It's a signed confession of heresy, accusing the very men who feed you of being cunning predators devouring their flock. 99% of people who see this in centuries to come will call it whimsical fantasy. They will see a funny animal picture. They won't understand that this is a coded political cartoon, a scream of defiance in a world that demands your total, unquestioning silence. This is the medieval equivalent of hiding a revolutionary manifesto in the source code of a state-run website, a secret language of rebellion visible only to those who know the code. Your hand trembles not from fear of God, but from the terrifying uncertainty of man. The water waits, and in the priest's eyes, you see not divine judgment, but the cold, hard glint of a man deciding whether a secret is worth more than a life. What they don't want you to know is that the language of power isn't always written in ink. Sometimes it's hammered into iron. 97% of these marks are dismissed by historians as simple craftsman variations, a blacksmith's flourish, an apprentice's mistake. They are wrong. Your fingers, calloused and smudged with soot, trace the cool, raised iron of a maker's mark on a new gate hinge. It feels like any other, a simple swirl and a dot, but you know it's a message. Tucked away on a gargoyle that seems older than the rest, a hunched figure with its face hidden in shadow. It's barely visible, etched into the stone behind its ear. A small, strange symbol, a circle with a broken line through the center and 3 dots beneath. It feels wrong, ancient. You scan the other carvings, your heart starting to beat a little faster. You see it again, on a snarling beast near the bell tower, and a 3rd time, on a figure that looks more like a victim than a monster, its mouth open in a silent, eternal scream. What they don't want you to know is that this book in your hands is part of a silent underground rebellion. New archaeological analysis of so-called witch marks, those strange symbols carved into the beams of peasant homes, reveals a shocking truth. Some are not charms. They are letters from a forgotten folk alphabet, a hidden language of the oppressed. You are part of an intellectual insurgency, and your hovel is a library in disguise. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. It wasn't your fear, it was theirs. It's a taste you can't wash away. Your hand pauses. You look at the words you've just written, the ones a historian will authenticate in 2017. Their discovery sending a shockwave through the sanitized, heroic narrative. You wrote that you came here not for religious fervor, but to seize the lands of these weak men and become a king. There it is, the buried truth, the rotten core of this glorious enterprise. It isn't a crusade. You take the paper, the proof of your purchase, but it feels weightless, meaningless. Your coin is gone. Your son is still dead. And a cold dread begins to creep into your heart. A thought so heretical, you dare not speak it. What if the fire isn't in purgatory? What if the real torment is right here, in this cold church, handing over your life to a man selling tickets to a place no one has ever seen? And what if the slip of paper in your hand isn't a key to heaven, but the receipt for a lie? Brother Thomas is asleep, his snores a soft rumble in the oppressive quiet. This is your chance. Your fingers, moving with a life of their own, begin to sketch. It starts as a line, then a curve, then the unmistakable snout of a fox. You give him a bishop's mitre, tilted at a jaunty, arrogant angle. You draw pulpit, and then his congregation, a flock of fat, stupid-looking geese, their necks craned, listening intently as the predator preaches their salvation. You feel a cold thrill, the metallic taste of fear mixed with triumph. This isn't just a doodle. The silence that falls is absolute. It is a vacuum, pulling all the air from your lungs. You can hear the wet scrape of your own tongue against the roof of your dry mouth. You can hear the frantic thumping in your ears. The priest takes your hand. His palm is dry and cool against your oiled skin. He guides your arm forward over the dark, shimmering water. The heat rises to meet you, a promise of pain. You stare at your own reflection, a distorted, terrified stranger looking back from the cauldron's depths. His silhouette is a black knife against the bruised purple of the sunset. And you realize, with a cold dread that has nothing to do with demons, that he wasn't following you. He was waiting. One carving shows a wolf in shepherd's clothing, its fangs dripping, standing over a flock of terrified lambs. It's not funny, it's a warning. Another depicts a creature with a human face whispering into the ear of a king. Its forked tongue, a clear symbol of poison and lies. These are public service announcements from a world with no printing press, a coded language for survival. They tell you who not to trust, what deals to avoid, which smiles hide daggers. Then you see it. A book, not the priest's heavy chained Bible, but something smaller, wrapped in oilcloth. A collection of herbal remedies and astronomical charts, copied in a rough but steady hand. They buried this secret because what they truly fear isn't heresy, it's you. A literate peasant is a questioning peasant. An educated populace is the greatest threat to any ruling class, then and now. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and the forgotten lives of our ancestors, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. They will never know the reality you are bleeding onto this page. You remember the walls of the city. The priest had blessed you all, promised that God was with you. But you did not feel God's presence when you kicked down the door of a weaver's home. You did not hear his voice in the screams of the family inside. You only heard the orders of your baron, his eyes glittering with a fever that had nothing to do with faith. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue even now, a phantom from that day. It's a spiritual racketeering scheme that keeps you poor, keeps you compliant, and keeps you terrified. It is the exact same model used by a modern payday lender who offers you a lifeline that is actually a noose, the same as an insurance company that profits from your fear of catastrophe, the same as a social media algorithm that learns what makes you anxious and sells that anxiety back to you, one click at a time. They don't sell a product. They sell the removal of a pain they have perfected the art of inflicting. Your back aches, a familiar fire that has settled deep in your bones after 12 hours hunched over the lectern. The Latin text before you is perfect, divine, and excruciatingly boring. You've copied this psalm 100 times. Your mind is numb. Your fingers are stained black. But your spirit is plotting a tiny, silent rebellion. You dip your goose quill pen. The main text is for God and the abbot. The margins, however, the margins are yours. In this sliver of empty space, you can speak the truth. You glance over your shoulder. The terror it induces is the most powerful tool for social control they have. Father Thomas finishes the anointing. His eyes meet yours. They are not the eyes of a holy man communing with the divine. They are the eyes of a chess player considering his next move. Does he save you, proving his own faction's mercy and power? Or does he condemn you, making an example for anyone else who might dare to listen to forbidden words? Your life rests on that political calculation. He gives your shoulder a final, chilling squeeze. The chanting stops. A list of mothers who chose a cure over a prayer. A list of women who dared to trust knowledge that grew from the earth instead of from a pulpit. You snatch the poultice and stumble backwards, a choked thank you dying in your throat. You turn and run from the hut, the warm linen clutched to your chest like a stolen jewel. It is a sin, a secret, a hope. As you burst back into the dying light of the woods, you glance back, and your heart stops. A shadow detaches itself from the tree line. It's him, the priest. The most subversive, the most insulting, the most politically charged gargoyles were not placed randomly. They were deliberately positioned on the sides of the cathedral with the highest visibility to the public square, to the market, to the common folk below. The clergy inside, looking out from their stained glass windows, would never see them. They were a broadcast, a secret channel for the powerless, a hidden transcript of rebellion. But as your eyes scan the stone menagerie, you realize some of them aren't caricatures. They aren't jokes. The laughter dies in your throat. In the pre-dawn gray of your one-room hovel, the world is a symphony of quiet miseries. The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping in the corner, the scuttling of a mouse in the walls, the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But beneath the filth and the fear, a secret fire burns. Your hand finds the loose floorboard, your fingernails scraping against the rough, splintered wood. You lift it. There, nestled in the dirt, is the unthinkable. It looks like a monster. You feel like one. The dry scratch of your quill on the precious parchment is the only sound that feels real. Each stroke is a betrayal of the Pope's promise, of the tearful farewell from your wife, of the cross stitched crudely onto your tunic. They promised you salvation, a holy war to reclaim Christ's land from the infidel. They promised you glory. What they never mentioned was the truth of conquest. 99% of people back home, huddled by their small fires, will only ever hear the songs. Newly digitized financial records, hidden in the Vatican archives for centuries, reveal the shocking truth. By the 15th century, the sale of these papers generated more revenue than the entire Kingdom of England. It was a shadow economy built on ghosts, a machine fueled by grief. As you slide the coin across the polished wood, you feel the invisible chains lock into place. This system wasn't designed for a one-time payment. It was designed for perpetual debt. Next year, there will be a new indulgence for your parents. The year after, for your own soul. The most dangerous weapon in the 12th century isn't a longsword. It's a joke, hidden where no one in power thinks to look. The candle gutters. Your shadow, a hunched and monstrous thing, dances against stone walls that have seen 1,000 years of silence. The air is thick with the smell of melting tallow, cold dust, and the sharp, metallic tang of iron gall ink. This is the scriptorium, the heart of Christendom, where God's word is made flesh on vellum. The priest isn't asking God if you're a thief. He's deciding if you're a threat. The hiss of your skin meeting the hot metal will be the climax of this performance. The collective gasp of the crowd is the desired response. This is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, designed to reinforce that the church is the sole arbiter of divine truth. It is no different from the heavily edited stories whispered by a king's herald or the public punishments in the square. They are not seeking truth. They are manufacturing consent. The fever should break by morning. She presses the poultice into your trembling hands. It feels impossibly warm, a small sun of hope against your cold skin. But the priest, you stammer, he says this is a pact. Elspeth's face hardens. The priest offers prayers for your boy's soul. I am offering you back your son. She glances towards the hut's leather flap door, a flicker of fear in her own eyes. He watches me. He watches everyone who comes here. He keeps a list. The word hangs in the air. A list. He isn't just carving stone. He's carving his rage into the very house of the god used to justify his oppression. With every strike, he pours his hunger, his grief for his lost child, his hatred for the smiling priest who preaches humility while wearing silk. He carves the bishop's jowls into a leering toad. He gives the greedy merchant the claws of a demon. He is hiding the truth in plain sight. And here is the secret that modern science uncovered. The proof that this was no accident. Recent archaeological analysis of erosion patterns reveals a stunning truth. 99% of people believe a lie about you. A lie so complete, so deliberately crafted by the powerful, that it has survived for 700 years. They want you to believe your ancestors were mud-covered simpletons, illiterate and ignorant, staring blankly at a world they couldn't comprehend. That's the story they wrote to make you underestimate where you come from, and more importantly, what you are capable of. You wake to the smell of wood smoke and the deep, cold scent of damp earth. It's the smell of your life,